It's so good to be worshiping together, isn't it? And it's so good to actually feel like we're almost a community again, and that maybe there's a hint that COVID's getting close to being behind us. I hope so. I hope that maybe this year is the year that we can actually maybe have a semblance of normal again, whatever the new normal looks like. I just want you to know that that my phone number is 0478 738 758. If you wanted to program that in, if you ever needed any pastoral help, 24/7, feel free to give us a call. All I say is if it's after 11, maybe even 12 o'clock at night, because I'm an owl, I go to bed late. If it's after midnight, it just needs to be important. If you want to talk about the fact that your home team lost that day, then maybe that's not the time to call unless it's really urgent. And before about 7, but otherwise, I'm here for you. And Grant is the same, and we're here to serve, and we want to actually be a blessing to you. And if you need our help, then we need to know about it, and we would love to be there to support you. Some of the greatest moments I've ever had in ministry have been in hospitals, gathered with family, praying for someone who's sick, anointing someone who's having heart troubles in hospital, or being there with family as someone is passing away. They're very precious moments, sacred moments, and it's a privilege and honor to share those with the families as they happen. And it's so nice, after so long of actually working in other places to finally be working in my home conference. I've spent 20 years away. And 20 years away. Now, this isn't my first church in this conference, it's my third. But it's so nice to be in my home conference after 20 years away and to be here and to see familiar faces from the home church that I grew up in, Merlin, and to recognize that there are some here who were part of Pathfinders when I was a club director at Hillview Church those few years ago. Well, actually few, I'm telling lies now. It's a long time ago. And so it's with that in mind, thinking of home and thinking of country, that I want to share something with you today before I start my ministry here. I want to formally acknowledge the Darking Young people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we are here on the Central Coast. And then to the south, the Ku-ring-gai people, and to the north, the Awabakal people as the traditional owners and the elders past, present, and emerging. And just acknowledge them. And acknowledge that as Adventists, we haven't always got our treatment of Aboriginal peoples right. Our conference has been here for 100 years. Just think that through. Miroslav wanted me to remind you that Gosford is celebrating the 100th anniversary soon. Don't worry about it. This is where the action is, right? Thank you. That's it. But if you've got a connection, or if you want to see them, go in the afternoon. That'll be good. But in 100 years of our being here, guess how many churches we have among our Aboriginal people? Just 2. And in that 100 years, we've got 23 different nations represented in our conference. And among those 23 different nations, we've got an active ministry among only 2 of those nations. When I mentioned this to our evangelism director in our conference, I said to him, look, we've got a Samoan church in Newcastle, we've got essentially a Korean church, we've got a Spanish church, we've got a Pacific Island church, we've got a Polish church, and the community sizes of those in the relative population are all less than 5,000. But between the Central Coast and the Hunter Valley, there's 30,000 Aboriginal people. So today, if you're Indigenous, or if you have Indigenous family and friends and connections, I just want to honour and remember and respect and pay acknowledgement to country, to the Aboriginal elders and leaders whose land we actually inhabit, and their generosity in sharing that country with us. And I pray that as a church, as we continue to move forward, that we can do so embracing the richness of all their culture that it would bring. Maybe Australia would be in a different place if we did things like maybe New Zealand did. And maybe our history and our heritage would represent a completely different thing. Maybe we'd recognize the value of recognizing that there's 26 different seasons instead of our just 4 that we get from the Northern Hemisphere. And maybe in the richness of those 26 seasons, we'd understand the long cycles of drought and rain and everything else that this land goes through, if only we took the time to embrace and understand their culture. You'll understand a few things more about me if you go on my Facebook page. I put a post up just this week. If you're looking for it, don't look for Neil Thompson, just look for Real Ideas Man, and then you'll find me on Facebook.